In shallow seas millions of years ago, algae and plants coexisted. The organic material decayed, sank to the seafloor, mingled with other sediments, and was buried. The remains of these animals underwent a transformation into what we now know as fossil fuels over millions of years at great pressure and high temperature. Fossil fuels including coal, natural gas, and petroleum developed under comparable conditions. Although it can also be yellowish, reddish, tan, or even greenish, crude oil is often black or dark brown in color. The unique chemical compositions of various crude oil suppliers are indicated by color variations. Lighter petroleum often has lower metal or sulfur content, sometimes nearly clear. Gasoline, a vital item in our daily life, is produced from petroleum. Additionally, it is processed and included in many other products, such as tires, freezers, life jackets, and anesthetics. Petroleum can now be discovered in huge subsurface reservoirs that were once ancient seas. Under the surface of the land or the water, there are petroleum reservoirs. Utilizing enormous drilling equipment, their crude oil is extracted. When petroleum products, like gasoline, are used for energy, they emit a lot of carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, as well as hazardous chemicals. The addition of carbon to the natural equilibrium caused by burning fossil fuels has a negative impact on our climate since carbon helps control the Earth's air temperature. Under the Earth's surface and in tar pits that bubble to the surface, there are enormous amounts of petroleum to be found. Even the deepest wells that have been built to extract it have petroleum in them. However, petroleum is a non-renewable energy source, just like coal and natural gas. When it is taken and consumed, there is no way for us to recreate it because it took millions of years to form. Oil will become scarce. The globe will eventually approach peak oil, or its maximum production level. According to some scientists, peak oil may occur as soon as 2050. Finding alternatives to petroleum is a priority for many businesses as it is essential to the world's use of energy. Formation of petroleum. When plants, algae, and plankton were drifting in oceans and shallow seas millions of years ago, the geological conditions that would later give rise to petroleum were developed. At the conclusion of their lives, these invertebrates sank to the ocean floor. They were eventually covered and crushed by countless tons of sediment and further layers of plant detritus. Ancient oceans eventually dried up, leaving behind dry basins known as sedimentary basins. The organic stuff was squeezed down beneath the basin floor between the Earth's mantle, which has extremely high temperatures, and the millions of tons of rock and silt above. In these conditions, where oxygen was almost entirely absent, organic matter started to change into kerogen, a waxy substance. The kerogen preceded a process termed catagenesis in which it changed into hydrocarbons with further heat, time, and pressure. Chemicals consisting of hydrogen and carbon are known as hydrocarbons. Different heat and pressure ratios can result in a variety of hydrocarbon types. Coal, peat, and natural gas are some further examples. Petroleum is primarily found in sedimentary basins, which are the locations of former seabeds. Nigeria, Cameroon, and Equatorial Guinea are all parts of Africa that are covered by the Niger Delta Sedimentary Basin. The enormous Niger Delta Basin contains more than 500 oil resources, making it one of Africa's most productive oil fields. Petroleum reservoirs. Reservoirs are subsurface crevasses where petroleum can be found. There is a tremendous amount of pressure deep within the Earth. Oil steadily leaks out in the direction of the surface, where there is less pressure. Up until it comes across an impenetrable layer of rock, it moves in this manner from high to low pressure. After that, the petroleum gathers in reservoirs, which may be hundreds of meters below the Earth's surface. Structural traps, which are created when large layers of rock are bent or faulted, broken, by the Earth's moving landmasses, are capable of containing petroleum. Also capable of containing oil are stratigraphic traps. The porosity of different strata, or layers of rock, can vary. For example, crude oil would be confined beneath a layer of shale but would easily travel through a layer of sandstone. Engineers, chemists, and geologists search for geological formations that frequently trap petroleum. They search for subterranean rock formations that may have contained crude oil using a technique known as seismic reflection. An explosion of a smaller size occurs during the procedure. Underground sound waves travel, reverberate off the many varieties of rock, and then resurface. In order to ascertain the underground geological structure and the presence of a petroleum resource, sensors on the ground translate the reflected sound waves. In a reservoir, the volume of petroleum is expressed in tons or barrels. About 42 gallons make up an oil barrel. United States oil producers typically utilize this measurement. European and Asian oil producers typically measure in metric tons. An average of 6 to 8 barrels of oil make up 1 metric ton. Because different types of oil weigh differently based on the presence or absence of contaminants, the conversion is not exact. Extracting petroleum. Petroleum occasionally bubbles up to the Earth's surface. For instance, porous geology in Saudi Arabia and parts of Iraq permits oil to seep to the surface in small ponds. The majority of oil is, however, confined to subsurface oil reservoirs. Oil in place refers to the total amount of petroleum in a reservoir. The oil in place in a reservoir is made up of many petroleum liquids that can't be recovered. It can be too difficult, risky, or expensive to drill for these petroleum liquids. Oil reserves are the portion of a reservoir's oil in place that can be recovered and refined. Oil reserves at a site are frequently taken into consideration when deciding whether to invest in complicated drilling operations. Drilling may be directed, exploratory, or developmental. Developmental drilling refers to drilling in a region where oil reserves have already been discovered. The largest oil reserves in the United States are located in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. Prudhoe Bay development drilling involves drilling new wells and developing extraction techniques. The oil reserves of a reservoir are the portion of the oil in place that can be recovered and processed. An area's known oil deposits are frequently taken into account when deciding whether to invest in complicated drilling operations. Drilling may be exploratory, directed, or developmental. Developmental drilling is when a well is drilled in a location where oil reserves have already been discovered. The largest oil reserves in the country are located in Alaska's Prudhoe Bay. New wells and evolving extraction techniques are part of Prudhoe Bay's development drilling. Exploratory drilling is drilling where there are no proven reserves. Drilling that is used for exploration, often known as wildcat drilling, is dangerous and has a high failure rate. However, many wildcatters are tempted to try exploratory drilling because of the possible advantages of hitting oil. For instance, Diamond Glenn McCarthy is referred to as the king of the wildcatters due to his success in locating the vast oil deposits close to Houston, Texas. In the 1930s, McCarthy struck oil 38 times and made millions of dollars. Drilling for exploration takes place in areas with no known reserves. Exploration drilling, also referred to as wildcat drilling, is risky and has a high failure rate. However, because there may be benefits to hitting oil, many wildcatters are enticed to conduct exploratory drilling. Because of his prowess in discovering the massive oil deposits outside Houston, Texas, Diamond Glenn McCarthy is known as the king of the wildcatters. McCarthy struck oil 38 times in the 1930s, earning millions of dollars. Refining petroleum. The process of turning crude oil or bitumen into more useful products, such fuel or asphalt, is known as refining petroleum. Sand and sulfur are among the contaminants that are present in crude oil when it is extracted from the earth. It's necessary to separate these parts. The crude oil is heated in a distillation tower with trays and temperatures set at various levels to accomplish this. When oil is heated, vapors from the various elements rise to various levels of the tower before condensing back into liquid on the tier-like trays because metals and hydrocarbons have varying boiling points. On several tiers of the tower, propane, kerosene, and other substances condense and can be separately collected. Pipelines, ships at sea, and vehicles are utilized to deliver them to various sites where they are either used immediately or undergo additional processing. Petroleum industry. Millions of people did not always obtain, refine, and use oil as they do now. But many societies have always valued it as a significant component. As early as 350 CE, China began to drill the first documented oil wells. Using sturdy bamboo bits, the wells were dug about 244 meters, 800 feet, deep. Bamboo pipelines were used to extract and transport the oil. As a heating fuel and industrial component, it was burned. In order to evaporate brine and generate salt, Chinese engineers used petroleum. Indigenous inhabitants on the west coast of North America utilized bitumen as a binding agent for making ceremonial objects and ornaments, as well as an adhesive to seal boats and baskets. The ability to burn petroleum for light was found by Japanese engineers in the 7th century. An alchemist from Persia created kerosene in the 9th century by distilling oil. Whale hunting experienced a dramatic drop in the 1800s as petroleum gradually replaced whale oil in kerosene lights. Beginning in the 1850s, the modern oil business was born. In 1853, Poland saw the drilling of the world's first well. Since then, numerous nations have benefited from the technology's advancement. Petroleum use has greatly expanded as a result of the Industrial Revolution. Steam-powered equipment quickly grew to be too sluggish, expensive, and small-scale. Fuel with a petroleum base was in demand. Early in the 20th century, the mass-produced vehicle was developed, which substantially boosted demand for gasoline. The amount of petroleum produced has grown quickly. The United States produced 2,000 barrels of oil in 1859. It reached 126 million barrels annually in 1906. Currently, the United States produces 6.8 billion barrels of oil annually. Every day, more than 70 million barrels are produced worldwide, according to OPEC. Nearly 49,000 barrels every minute, to be exact. Even though that looks like an absurdly high number, petroleum is now used in practically all aspects of existence. Our lives are made easier in many ways by petroleum. Millions of employment, ranging from surveyors and platform workers to geologists and engineers, are supported by the oil sector in numerous nations, including the United States. Oil consumption in the U.S. exceeds that of any other nation. Over 19 million barrels of oil were consumed daily by the United States in 2011. This is greater than the total oil consumption of Eastern Europe, Asia, and the 8.5 million people in Latin America. Thousands of daily things have petroleum as a component. Crude oil is used to make the fuel we use to get to work, school, and holiday destinations. Around the world, gasoline is used to power vehicles such as cars, boats, airplanes, and scooters. 1 barrel of petroleum yields approximately 72 liters, 19 gallons, of gasoline. Many isolated residences, schools, and hospitals employ diesel generators. Diesel generators provide electricity to hospitals, apartment buildings, schools, and other structures that would otherwise be in the dark and cold during emergencies when the power supply is disrupted, saving lives. Petroleum is also a component of liquid goods like ammonia, rubbing alcohol, and nail paint. Surfboards, footballs and basketballs, bicycle tires, golf bags, tents, cameras, and fishing lures are just a few examples of the leisure products that contain petroleum. Additionally, petroleum can be found in more necessary things like vitamin capsules, water pipes, and artificial limbs. We rely on and are surrounded by petroleum-based products in our houses. Refined petroleum can be found in things like house paint, trash bags, roofing, shoes, cell phones, hair curlers, and even crayons. Thank you for watching. View more our channel videos.